These Hearthstone decks all cost around 1600 dust to craft and are all good enough to hit legend. Remember, these cards are just a base for you to build upon, so feel free to add any of these cards I bring up or anything else that gives you a hard on. I don't know, I'm not stopping you. The first and easiest deck for you to run is the classic Face Hunter. The game plan is simple. Play your minions early in the game and hit the face as much as reasonably possible. When you start running out of steam, use your spells and hero power to finish off your opponent and add another person bitching on Reddit about the meta. You know, the good stuff. You want a mulligan for low cost minions that give you tempo, and just as a time saver, you're going to do that with every deck in this video, except for one, but we'll get there when we get there. Though this deck is fairly cheap, there are some improvements you can make. You might have not gotten Mankrik for free from the last Forge in the Barons Battle Pass, and if that's the case, just add any early game card that gives you good board presence. You've got the Warsong Wrangler and Trampling Rhino combo, but that costs 1000 dust in itself, so maybe don't do that. Ringling's Rifle is always a good add, and Barracuda is best used with Mankrik, so if you don't have Mankrik in the deck, you probably don't need Barracuda. For cards you can replace in this deck, Piercing Shot, Headhunter's Hatchet, and Alexstrasza are all placeholder cards, so feel free to abandon them like babies after prom night. The next deck is an aggro Druid deck, which answers the question, what if Brain Tumors were a Hearthstone deck? The idea of this deck is you play a bunch of your small cost minions and then buff them with your spells like Sow the Soil and Arbor Up. It's a pretty simple idea, but when played properly, I believe token Druid decks are one of the hardest decks to play around. The problem is that this deck is arguably the hardest deck to run in this list, so if you want a deck with a high skill cap, this one is for you. The deck list for this deck constantly changes too. Key cards are Composting, which I didn't put in there because I'm poor, Arbor Up, Oracle of Elune, and Razormane Battle Guard to discount those early taunt minions. If you want to make this deck better, you can take out some of the low cost minions. Except for Vibrant Squirrel, that card is a saint among men. Put in cards that will give you some board presence, hand refill, or board buffs and you will be good. But let's be honest, who would ever want to play a Druid deck? They're the abominations of nature. Secret Paladin is the next deck with slower gameplay compared to the previous two decks. The plan is to play on curve and build up a good board against your opponent while squeaking in that face damage while you can. You can do a big burst turn with Alliance Bannerman buffs on low cost minions, or just play minions as you go too. Once you're ready, you can use the embodiment of a bad time or your weapons to finish off your opponent. If you didn't get Blade Master Samuro and beautiful Shining Diamond like I totally have right here, then you can just put in any secret in there, it's not the biggest deal. Or you can put in a minion with a big effect like Kazakus. You can also take out Tyrion or Libram of Judgment for other big legendaries, but if you're not willing to spend that much dust like I am, then this deck will work fine for you. It's an easy deck to play and at the top of the meta right now. But let's look at the other best deck in the meta right now, the Elemental Shaman. The game plan is similar to the Secret Paladin where you want to play minions on curve, but with this deck, you're looking to push more aggressively. You've got a really solid early game, which will help you pile on the early damage, while your spells can burst on your opponent at the end of the game. Auction House Gavel and Lilypad Lurker are both solid options if you want to put them in your deck and you have the dust for it. But there are so many cards you can put in this deck, so feel free to experiment with polyamory. And if you want to take out some cards, take out Alexstrasza and Stormstrike. That's because Stormstrike is used in this next deck, the aggro Elemental Shaman. The game plan is the exact same, but instead of using spells at the end of the game to deal damage, you use your Doomhammer and attack buffs to deal that damage. This deck is the cheapest deck by far, and I didn't even have to make any adjustments, so it's that easy to build. Just like this next deck, the No Minion Mage, where you draw a bunch of cards and use your burst to deal absurd amount of damage. The only way you can go wrong is if you put a minion in this deck. Except for Cthulhu, he's special. But the only spell you shouldn't put in this deck is Deck of Lunacy. People who do that don't deserve thumbs. In this deck, there are no minions, so you're going to look for Enchantress Flow, Font of Power, maybe Primordial Studies, or Ruined Orb in the mulligan. If we're talking about cards you don't really need in your deck, you don't need Cthulhu, but I like it in there just for some extra cards. If you want to upgrade the deck, you should just make Quest Mage, which costs way too much for me to justify putting in this video, so we get the thrift shop version instead. The next deck is Shadow Priest, which shows us what would happen if the Pope picked up a Glock. Yes, you do need a legendary to play this deck, but trust me, this deck works wonders. The game plan is similar to Face Hunter, where you build up a fast early game and then finish it off with your hero power and spells. And besides the one legendary and Mankrik, which you honestly can replace with another 3-drop, the deck is fairly cheap, with the exception of Void Touch Attendant, which is essential to play in this deck. Since you're going for a wide board here, that extra damage from each minion will add up. If you want to see this deck in action, check out this video right here where I defeat racism with it. Don't ask, it just works. And if you're more looking to climb the Hearthstone ladder, check out this guide where I explain the best way for you to do that. I've got lots of guides and other Hearthstone videos on my channel that's more than just playing a deck on stream and uploading it, so if that's what you're into, you should subscribe. Thanks for stopping by, I'll see you next time.